But let's say you're in industry and you can't get it anywhere else. Well, there it is. Stand for delivery. So that implies, but doesn't guarantee, that the supply chain, I wouldn't say is breaking down, but more than the usual amount is coming off the COMEX, which implies, again, I can't put it into a proof formula that we're looking at more silver taken off, because it really is a place to go to get it, especially in a timely manner.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for August 25th through September 1st, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, 1 ounce gold Britannia are just $60 over spot per ounce. Next, 1/10 ounce gold Canadian maples are only $35 over melt per coin. 1 ounce silver maples are just $2.89 over spot. And 1 ounce silver kangaroos are only $2.79 over spot per ounce. And with a 250 ounce monster box, they're the lowest priced monster box available. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today is our good friend David Morgan from the Morgan Report. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Elijah, it's great to be with you.
Well, I wanted to discuss today the differing opinions with respect to what is happening on the COMEX, and your opinion specifically. A lot of people are looking at the COMEX data and interpreting it as a lot of big players moving into the market and taking delivery of the metal and all that. You recently talked about how the movements we're seeing in the COMEX are very unusual and very supportive of higher prices. Can you kind of shed some light on what is really happening at the COMEX today?
Yeah, thank you, Elijah. Well, I did it on my weekly perspective. For those that don't know, I do a lot of information or education for free. I do what's called a weekly perspective at the end of every week. And I touch on different things, but almost always I touch on the metals. Sometimes I touch on geopolitics or what have you. But last week I talked about the ebbs and flows in the silver market. So going back to the big picture. In the futures markets, if you look at the softs like cocoa and cotton, or you look at the ags like wheat and soybean oil, or you look at the metals, any of those sectors, usually you only get about 1% of the total that actually gets a delivery against the contract. So 99% of the time, you're just pushing paper back and forth. And that's what the futures market is. It's a derivatives market where settlement is almost always in cash. There are exceptions. There are deliveries of cotton and cocoa and silver. So on silver specifically, we have seen a big change over the last year or so. And this was primarily, and there's arguments about why the silver moved from London into the COMEX, but it's primarily an arbitrage opportunity. And the big players that own the silver physically are able to take these boatloads of silver and move it from a location to another location and still make a spread on it. So that's what happened. And the inflows and outflows have just been above normal. I mean, anyone that's objective and can count knows that that's a fact. In fact, in the weekly perspective, I believe last week, I went through the numbers. I don't have them memorized, but we've had a significant more activity in and out of the COMEX over the last, like I said, year or so. And I did note that, I watched the flows rather carefully, not as avidly as I used to, but I still pay attention to it. And whenever we got to the registered category, which is the amount of chips that the registered category, being the dealers, have available, when that gets thin, it's like playing poker and you have a big stack of poker and you're losing the game, and all of a sudden your stack goes way down. And that indicates that they don't have much physical silver to deliver into someone standing for delivery. And it got down to like the lowest level I'd seen in a very long time, and it stayed there longer than I'd ever seen before. And I made note of that to my subscribers, and probably publicly, I don't remember. And pretty much after the words were out of my mouth, we start to get this huge build in the overall categories, primarily in the registered category, and primarily from the LBMA. So those are facts. But the one I want to stress is after Warren Buffett bought 129.7, rounded up to 130 million ounces off the COMEX, he actually only delivered 90 million instantly. And he took, the offer, I guess, to get the rest, the other 40 million over time. And if I remember correctly, someone can check me, but I think it was after that. I'm pretty certain it was after that. There was a limit on 7,500 contracts that you could take off the exchange. Now, I think that's gone away because we haven't seen that in quite some time. But the exchange is kind of protecting themselves because they wanted to prevent someone coming in and buying up the whole silver supply and saying, all right, we're sending for delivery. So whether that holds now or not, I just want to bring that to everybody's attention. So the bottom line is this. It is a fact that the ebbs and flows in silver, gold as well, through the COMEX has been greater these last years or two than it has been previously. That's just a fact. Whether someone says it's normal, I'd say it's quote unquote normal in air quotes, as long as everybody that stands for delivery gets their silver or gold in a timely manner, then yeah, of course it's normal because it's supposed to be, as stated, available to anyone who stands for delivery to get the product, whether it's cocoa or cotton, soybean oil or silver.
Now, when we talk about deliveries off of COMEX, is this actually people taking physical delivery of the metal, or is it more kind of just a accounting? Is it kind of just on paper that people are, the ownership is moving back and forth?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because in most cases, you got these, we'll call them large pallets of silver 1,000-ounce bars. And on that whole pallet of however many bars there are, I never counted them, there's a tag that says HSBC. And then someone stands for delivery and they take off the HSBC and they put on JP Morgan on it and the silver never moved. But ownership did, but it never left the warehouse. The only way to track that is to see how many semi-truck trailers come in there and actually take it outside of a COMEX warehouse. And that part of the activity has changed as well, more than before. I mean, just on the input, when you're sitting there and all these, semis pull up to COMEX warehouses and there's more than one of them and delivers 1,000-ounce bars and someone's got to, take a forklift and move them in and put them in a pallet or on a shelf. That is a physical movement that increases the silver supply. And that's what took place. So someone say that it's all a paper change is incorrect in this instance.
And it seems like regardless, what this is showing is there's a lot more volume in the precious metal markets right now. I mean, especially as we talk about the silver market as well. Would that be kind of a fair assessment? And what does this mean for prices going forward then?
Yeah, well, this is where you got to put on a tinfoil hat. I guess I'll put a black one on here and make the statement. So what it indicates to me is that I looked at the COMEX once I understood how it really worked with 99% just being a paper push, that anything that came off had some substance to it, because I look at it as, and you don't have to agree, it's kind of the place of last resort. The last place you're going to take the silver, and not necessarily, but it's certainly not the first place. I mean, anyone that's in the industry, be it a fabricator for silver shot or screen or wire or all the different fabricated things that silver goes into, which is vast, they get it usually direct from a refiner or smelter, and they do what they do. They don't ever take it off the COMEX. And so who takes it off the COMEX? First of all, very few, but those that do usually are for investment purposes, but not always. But let's say you're in industry and you can't get it anywhere else. Well, there it is. Stand for delivery. So that implies, but doesn't guarantee, that the supply chain, I wouldn't say is breaking down, but more than the usual amount is coming off the COMEX, which implies, again, I can't put it into a proof formula, that we're looking at more silver taken off, because it really is a place to go to get it, especially in a timely manner, maybe you called up a refiner and said, hey, we're at this level and it's going to take, 4 weeks. Really? Okay. Well, I can get delivery next week if I just stand for delivery or whatever. So again, I'll make it an implication. I'm wearing a hat. You can take it for what you want, but that's what it shows me. And this has happened in others. I mean, there's others. It's called rapeseed oil. It's really canola oil. And there was a shortage a long time ago, and that market went just absolutely ballistic, like palladium did at one time. But it was what I call popcorn rally. It went from here to almost straight up. The deliveries were made, and it came right back down. But it does happen, and it is happening, and I'll take off my hat and continue.
Now, many are talking about how this increased volume or this increased trading on the COMEX, and possibly, as you mentioned, one interpretation of this data is that a lot is coming off of the COMEX, is really signaling that the larger players in the market are waking up to the fact that the US dollar is declining in value, is being inflated away. Its dominance in the world is decreasing. I wanted to get your perspective on this because you recently wrote an article, and the title of it is Freedom Dies When Money Lies. And it kind of goes over why when you have paper currency, you lose freedom. So I think one of the things that I guess people are recognizing, if we look at what's happening on the COMEX and we just look at the spot price itself, is large players and also in some sense the retail public, but we're seeing kind of dampened demand right now on the retail space. At least some people are waking up to the fact that dollars are losing value. We are in a fiat currency system that, if we look throughout history, is pretty much destined to ultimately fail. So I guess that's a good sign out there for freedom, that people are waking up. But why is it fundamentally that if you have a fiat currency system and the currency is failing, that then freedom also fails along with it?
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I'll just read the first paragraph because I did my best to articulate how they tie together. So there's an old truth at our peril: when money loses its integrity, freedom soon follows. Throughout history, the erosion of honest currency has marched in lockstep with the erosion of civil liberties. The connection is not coincidental, it's causal. Because money is not just a medium of exchange, it's the lifeblood of voluntary action. When it's corrupted, everything downstream begins to decay. Professional agency, self-reliance, and ultimately freedom itself. In a truly free society, individuals make decisions based on trust. They trust that the fruits of their labor, measured in quote-unquote currency, will retain value over time. They trust their savings will serve as a source of wealth, not a melting ice cube. They trust investments will respond to real-world fundamentals, not the whims of unelected technocrats operating behind closed doors. So it's a rigged system. I go into what you just alluded to with Venezuela, the Weimar Republic, and you lose basically your freedom and you get a tyrannical government and civil unrest. And that's the direction we're going toward. And to back up, Catherine Austin Fitts, it talks about, all the people that talk about the dollar is collapsing or failing. It is failing. I think I push back on that word, and I'm not sure she even uses that word. I mean, it's worth about 1.5 cents of what it was in 1913. So certainly holding its value, which is one of the mandates of the Federal Reserve, it's done a miserable job. Whether it'll fail completely, I highly, highly doubt that. I do believe that we will transition into a new system before we get a complete failure. But that doesn't mean that the market won't react as if it's going to fail completely. And that's where you get into what von Mises calls the crack up boom, where I'd rather buy, 5 jars of peanut butter and some tuna fish rather than keep the currency, because I know that, or believe that currency is losing value so rapidly. I'd rather have something of value rather than hold the currency itself. Will we get to that point or not? I don't think we will get to that point on a mass psychology basis, but I think we're already seeing it, as you alluded to, from the bigger players, the smart money, like what happened with gold. When I said the run to gold has already begun, which I was correct. And we saw the major central banks buy gold at a substantial rate above and beyond what they'd done in the past over the last year and a half or two. And now we're starting to see it in the silver market.
Now, you mentioned in the article some like psychological effects where kind of debased money really turns into invisible handcuffs for the population. And I guess in some sense, one way to interpret that is we're seeing the middle class really being squeezed at the moment. People really having a hard time as we have high interest rates and high inflation. But can you expand a bit more on why there's this handcuffing of the public when we have this this debasing of the currency?
Well, in that light, the defense of sound money is a huge financial concern for everybody. Everybody's worried about their money, whether it's yen or euros or dollars. And it becomes a moral imperative that currency holds its value. It empowers people to live independently, to think long-term, and to resist coercion. It protects sovereignty, both national and individually. Remember, sovereignty simply implies the capacity for self-determination. In other words, you're not ruled by an authority that commands what you can eat, where you can go, what you can say, and what you can do. And gold and silver have served that role for thousands of years, not because they're shiny, because they're scarce, verifiable, and resistant to centralized control. When we have the ownership of money, then we have control. When they own the money and dole it out, they have control. So the digital currency offers new tools to the control mechanism under the guise of convenience, and the battle over money is reaching an inflection point. Who controls it? Well, the banks do, and as they control it, it worsens our ability to make our own free will decisions, and that's just the way it is. So I end that with we will continue down this path of dependence and dilution, or will we reclaim the principles of honest money and with them the promise of a truly free society? The answer is determined far more than a piece of gold or return to your portfolio. It will determine whether future generations are a free people or managed subjects of a technocratic financial system designed to control, not liberate.
And there are some concerning developments we've seen from the Trump administration. And I mean, there's been talk about central bank digital currency for quite a while. And you're talking about maybe we'll, instead of just a complete collapse of the dollar system, we'll roll into a new system. We just had Gregory Mannarino on the show, and he was saying that, they kind of threw away the idea of central bank digital currency, and instead Trump signed the Genius Act, right, which is for the issuance of stable coins and all of these kinds of tokenized assets. And this is a concerning development because it seems almost like this could be kind of a new monetary system in some sense, a centralized monetary system, and it could have a lot of the same negative effects on freedom that central bank digital currency has. Do you have any opinion on that, the Genius Act, and how it kind of is rolling out almost kind of a new monetary system here?
Sure. Yeah, we wrote about it in the Morgan Report. In fact, my daughter writes that part of the report. It's we call it the blockchain brief. We've been doing it for years. And some of my people were a little perturbed that we took the space in the report to talk about, blockchain so much. But I saw early on that was the new system they were going to push on us. And so we cover it. And, most of our readers are happy to have that information. So no, I absolutely agree with Greg. I mean, it was the sleight of hand, look over here, look over here. No CBDC, no CBDC. But they put it in over here under a different guise called the Genius Act and let JP Morgan issue it, or Amazon, or both of them. So they're going to get to it in the public-private partnership rather than the central bank. So what? It's still the same control mechanism no matter who labels it or who issues it. If you're forced to take it, like you are now with the legal tender laws, and you can only make payment in their script, and you do it by force, you don't have a choice, then, of course, they have the control. Now, on that point, being a member of the Sound Money Movement and being on their board, their advisory board, there has been pushback by the states. I think there's something like 16 states now that have some level of honest money in the system. And in some cases, you can actually pay taxes with gold or silver. And I think there's only a couple states that allow that. But this is a pushback mechanism that we are putting in what I said in an essay, that if you have the ability to determine your own financial future based on a choice of which quote unquote money you use. Now we're getting power back into the people. At least they have the opportunity to determine for themselves how they want to transact in the monetary realm. So it's not over till it's over. And we do have the ability. And there's many people out there. I mean, if you talk to someone that's never watched Liberty and Finance and they really don't understand how the monetary system works and how much control it has over people, probably wouldn't give it a second thought. You know, the credit card works. I get my Starbucks every morning and I'm happy. Why should I even worry about it? Because they don't understand history and haven't had the time or inclination to look at it.
It is concerning also. I was noting that it's in my interview with Greg Manarino, I was noting that it seems like, at least in my circles, there are people who are, I guess, waking up to the idea of, you know, pushing back against government control and all of that. But in other people's circles, really, a lot of people are just going along with this whole new system. And with respect to money in particular, I think a lot of people, you know, don't use cash anymore, are just completely within the system. So in your view, how do we wake people up to the reality of fiat currency, the reality of this new Genius Act that could be very detrimental to our liberty here in the monetary realm? So how do we wake people up in this regard?
Yeah, it starts with education, starts with being objectively truthful and to continue to write about it, talk about it. And of course, I've done this documentary, which is almost finished. And it pushed a bit of a nerve because early in the documentary, Foster Gamble, who did the Thrive 1 and Thrive 2 movies, and we're pretty good friends, talks exactly on this subject. And he talks about how it's convenient and all these things that we're told about a digital currency, and it's easier, it's faster, it's more convenient, and all these things. But then he goes on to explain that those points are valid. However, it's more of a control mechanism. And, excuse me, we really don't want it. If you're a voluntarist and you want to have freedom, you don't want to have this kind of control over your monetary affairs. So you really hit the nail on the head, Elijah. And that film should be out here fairly soon. I'm going to release it to my members first and let them have a look, maybe. And I'm thinking about doing some follow-up on it. I was asked to maybe make like a PDF file and maybe water it down somewhat into the bare essentials for like a home study PDF for, how money really works in the system, or maybe homeschoolers or something like that. So got enough to do, but I could probably take that on because it resonates with me. Again, it has to be the truth and it has to be presented however we can for people to reach their own conclusions. But many people, as in the Matrix movie, that I did that little takeoff on, Neo comes to Morpheus and he says, there's something wrong with the world. You felt it your entire life. You don't know what it is, but you feel it. And I think there's a lot of people in that realm that they know something is wrong, but they don't know what it is, but they feel it. And that, I think, is the opening that we have to ask the right questions. Well, what do you feel about, your savings? You feel they're worth as much as they were 5 years ago, or however you open the door or keep the door open?
I guess last question with respect to the current financial system. We're seeing a lot of drama, you could say, between the Federal Reserve and the president. Trump firing one of the board of governors of the Federal Reserve. It seems like Trump putting a lot of pressure on Powell to reduce interest rates. Do you see this as kind of the system losing some credibility and people kind of waking up to that fact, or what do you make of this this conflict between the presidency and the Federal Reserve?
Quite a bit. I mean, as you outlined, I think that the administration may know that they're breaking the boundaries and they're doing it deliberately, maybe with thought. Some people won't agree with me. Asking my opinion. This is opinion, people. And I think he's doing a lot of executive orders and a lot of things that are pushing the boundaries of what his true powers are. Not his, Trump's, but the executive branch of government. And it's testing the whole system. it looks to me, my opinion, that the boundaries between the legislation, the judicial, and the executive are being tested left, right, and center. And we're seeing what the judiciary has done with a lot of these charges against Trump and, being dropped or dismissed or held or whatever, fines and then fines dropped. I mean, the whole thing is being put into question right before our eyes. It's not like a philosophy class about U.S. government. We're watching it. I mean, to tell this lady she's fired because she used her primary residence twice, which isn't right, and the law is supposed to be equal. I mean, the whole thing about the Constitution is it's supposed to be we're all equal. It doesn't mean equal in physical ability or intelligence or skill sets. It means equal under the law. So it doesn't matter if you're the president or a janitor or a ditch digger or a farmer or a miner or whatever you are. We are treated the same equally under the law. So if someone used a primary residence twice, two different residences and called them both primary, you can only have one. They did something. Now, whether that gives Trump the ability to fire her or not, I would question that highly. But he did it anyway. So I'm going on, but I think the whole system is being tested, not only on the monetary level, through the three branches of government. And we're getting to a tipping point, as far as I can tell, where all great empires get. And that's where they start to fail. And people themselves start to look to the powers that be and say, what's going on here? This isn't right. This isn't correct. We never had this before. What's happening? And then we get a new regime. And in the past, the new regime has been more authoritarian. And that, of course, is not what I'm shooting for. I'm shooting for more freedom, not more authority.
And if people are interested in learning more, they can go to themorganreport.com. You're also very active on Twitter. We'll put links in the description of this video here. Any last thoughts before we let you go, David?
No, Elijah, thanks for being a free market thinker and allowing all of your guests to speak their mind. I think the different perspectives help people kind of put the puzzle together for themselves. And I was just thinking when we connected before we started the recording, how many years we've known each other and how much you've grown, and having that aim in life where you know what your purpose is and following it through, because you caught the fire probably similar to my age. I mean, I was very young when this fire started to burn in me, and I pursued it for a great deal of my life. So thank you for what you do.
The same to you, David. Thank you so much for what you do. And thank you so much for your time today. And God bless.
God bless.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for August 25th through September 1st, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, 1 ounce gold Britannia are just $60 over spot per ounce. Next, 1/10 ounce gold Canadian maples are only $35 over melt per coin. 1 ounce silver maples are just $2.89 over spot. And 1 ounce silver kangaroos are only $2.79 over spot per ounce. And with a 250 ounce monster box, they're the lowest priced monster box available. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.